You are listening to Accents, a radio show for literature, art, and culture. I'm your host, Katerina Stoikova, and my guest today is writer, poet, lawyer, sportsman, Mike Wilson. Hi, Mike. How are you?
Hi, thank you so much, Katerina, for having me on your show.
Very excited to talk to you. Mike Wilson is the author of Arranging Deck Chairs on the Titanic, which just came out, I think, this summer from Rabbit House Press, Political Poetry for Post-Truth World. Mike resides in Central Kentucky and can be found at mikewilsonwriter.com. Congratulations on your book. This is your first book. From the title, we can tell it's political. Tell us more.
Okay. I write a lot of poetry, and over the last few years, it's been hard not to write political poetry. So I took a class with somebody you know, about how to put together a poetry collection, and this is the outcome.
Yeah, by the end of the class, it was there because you
Yes,
had all the poems.
I did, but I wouldn't have put it together without that class and without your help. So I really appreciate it. So I've been watching this happening over the last several years, what's happening in the United States. I saw it coming before Trump. I actually wrote some novels about demagogues in politics, although in my novels, I predicted that it was going to be a preacher, somebody in religion, but a lot of the same things, the country dividing into half, people threatening violence, domestic terrorism. And then when Trump got nominated, I felt like what I had been imagining was actually coming to pass. So I actually felt kind of scared that maybe by just even thinking about it, I was helping bring it about. I didn't imagine a character like Trump, though.
What's different about him?
I'm sorry?
What's different about him?
In my novel, my antagonist had to have at least some redeeming characteristics. And they had dominating bad characteristics. Donald Trump seems to combine the worst of so many different areas. I mean, he's sort of like a Superman of bad character. So if I had written a novel with Trump as the antagonist, nobody would have believed it. It would have been too implausible, even as parody or satire or something. So he sort of put me out of he made my novels no longer relevant. Reality surpassed my imagination.
But you wrote poems about it. So the novel.
I did. When I wrote poems, a lot of times when I write, I'm trying to work things out in my head. I find that if I'm feeling something, that if you try to express it and try to express it accurately, you come to a better understanding of it. So many of these poems were written to help me deal with what I was perceiving about what was going on.
Would you say that the spirit of your novel trickled into your poems?
Yes, it does. But the novels have other things going on. I mean, the novels have, they're structured like a legal thriller. So there's a legal plot. And so there's a plot that moves, and you're trying to figure out what's going to happen, and is the good guy going to escape, and is the bad guy going to win? And there's a love interest. All of my novels have some romance in them. There's not that so much in these poems. These poems are focused more on political
Mhm.
things. There are a few hopeful poems, but most of them, frankly, aren't very hopeful.
Well, we have the word Titanic in the title.
Yes. And that comes from a line in one of the poems that I'll read later if you have me read a poem. Um, it's a line about Republicans dance like bank robbers and Democrats are arranging deck chairs on the Titanic.
Before I have you read, can you tell us about the protagonist of your novels? Since we said so much
Yes.
about the novels, I want to hear more even.
Well, most of them, the protagonist is a lawyer who plays tennis, and the novels are set in a tennis club. And it just so happens I'm a lawyer and I play tennis, and I imagined the imaginary tennis club based upon a tennis club that I play at all the time. So I would use that setting as a location for a lot of the scenes. So most of them are based upon that. There are a couple more that I have that are also law-based. So all of my novels are law-based. Um, they address legal issues, topical legal issues. The ones that are set in the tennis club focus on discrimination against gays and Muslims, and that's what I had predicted that was going to be the divide. I got it right on the gays, but not on the Muslims. But I have other novels that explore other issues. I have one that's set in a nursing home and explores dementia, um, which is something that has affected a lot of people in my family. So I have firsthand experience with that, and I've written poems about dementia as well. But I explore some of the legal issues involved with dementia and assisted suicide. Um, and then I have another novel that's set not at a tennis club, but in a small law practice in the country, which resembles the kind of law practice I had when I was practicing full time. And it also addresses the what I thought was going to be the division over gays and Muslims.
So how many novels do you have ready to go because you're done with them, and how many you have to go back and rethink
Good
because of
question.
Trump?
Um, well, I'm at this point. I would probably go back with all of them and do some revision. But I have three that are set in the tennis club, and they're chronological. I was thinking at the time I would do a series,
Right. Yeah.
and so that's how I wrote it. So after I wrote the first one, I wrote the second one and then the third one, and so the plot carries over from each novel, and so do the characters, except the ones that get killed off. Um, and then the one that's set in the nursing home is pretty much ready to go, and the one that's set out in the country is pretty much ready to go. I have another one that I started that I haven't completed that's set in the horse racing industry, um, which also is going to be, it's a murder mystery, but it's not a lawyer who's the protagonist. It's a couple of con artists who get involved in some shenanigans in the racing industry. And that one, um, in my capacity as a lawyer, I used to do officer work in cases involving the Kentucky Horse Racing Commission. So I'm drawing upon my knowledge of the horse racing industry through that. And the plot in that one concerns illegal drugging of horses. Um, but I haven't finished that one.
And you have short stories. You have a book of short stories that's ready to go, right?
I do, and I think that may come out maybe the first of the year or shortly thereafter. My short stories are um, they're not they're basically not political. They're more sentimental. They're usually built around a character, a particular character. Several of them are from the point of view of a child. Um, I'm real comfortable with that point of view. Um, a couple of them are from the point of view of an autistic child. Um, in fact, I have a recurring character that appears in a couple of stories. Um, as a lawyer, I do work in disputes involving school systems and parents with special needs kids. So I've picked up some knowledge of autistic uh, kids, and I know some people who are autistic.
So just to open a parenthesis here, what kind of challenges do children with special needs have in our schools?
What kinds of challenges do they
Yeah,
have? Uh, Autistic kids sometimes have difficulty dealing with too much sense impressions and being able to uh, interpret what's going on. It depends. The autism spectrum is wide, and there's different types of autism. Children in general in the school system, in many school systems, they get pretty good services. They get quite a bit of attention. Um, so it really depends upon on the school system. Some
okay,
school systems are very good at providing services for kids.
okay. It's amazing to me the range of voices that you speak through in your fiction. Um,
I like being in the shoes of various types of characters. I like writing from the point of view of women. I think I find women characters more interesting than men most of the time. And in my novels, the protagonist is a man, but the more interesting characters are the women uh, in the novels. Um, my short stories are about equally from the point of view of a male or a female. Um, I even have a couple of horror stories where the protagonist is kind of creepy and kills somebody. So I like the whole range
yeah,
from Reader's Digest sappy stories to things that are sort of at the other end of the spectrum.
that is amazing to me. That kind of shape shifting is truly amazing to me, Mike. Um, what about the poems? Back to the poems and your book, Arranging Deck Chairs on the Titanic. Would you like to read us several poems?
I'd love to. Thank you.
Mhm.
And I'll start with the first poem in the book. Um, this is a golden shovel poem where you take the poem of another poet, and the last word in each line of your poem has to be the words from the other poet's poem. So that if you read the last word vertically in each line, it will be the poem of the other poet. So, and this started out as an exercise. I found out what a golden shovel poem was, and I thought I would try one, and it ended up being political. The the poem the poem that it's based on is a poem by Arthur C, who writes sort of haiku-ish kind of poems. And so his poem was: smashing a jewelry case with a hatchet, he grabs a necklace from the splintered glass and races into oblivion. That was the poem. And so here's my golden shovel poem using his poem. It's called Thumbs Up. He swaggers through china shops, smashing mirrors and manners with a jackhammer hatred worn as jewelry. He hurls parades of hand grenades in case someone thinks he's not strong, grinning with used car salesman sincerity and shuffling a pack of lies, sharpening the hatchet for our collective suicide, while he sizes up suckers and grabs whatever he can reach, stringing a crime spree into a necklace of notches in a gun. Sent from Hollywood heaven is what the preachers say. Discernment splintered in prisons of stained glass. Tiki torches and stone cold faces and riots in rubble as everyone races to hiding places that shapeshift into seats on a train to oblivion. Shall I read another?
Please read us several.
Okay. The next one describes an actual occurrence and is a situation people will recognize even if it hasn't actually happened this way to them. It's called drinking bleach. He's pushing his grocery cart toward me. Hot Pockets, Cheetos, a 12-pack of beer. Pasty-faced and prematurely balding with a bushy beard to compensate. Frowning like someone tricked him into eating a pickle. He's literally wearing a frigging gun holstered at his waist. Going to Publix packing heat gun. Daring someone to pull on me gun. 12 feet away, his triggers cocked. Awaiting the president's tweet declaring open season on liberals, finally. And here I am, a big fat squirrel, a deer in headlights, wearing a shirt, Trump for prison, and looking like an immigrant gay Nancy Pelosi incarnation of what needs to be killed, gutted and strapped across the hood like an offering on the altar. I tighten my bandana, shut the trunk. Too late. He's in my face and says, ditch the mask. The president opened America. Some things even a sip of Clorox can't kill. The next poem is Pulling the Cat's Tail. I can't stream the news today. All the screens scream howling cats. Republicans dance like bank robbers. Democrats arrange deck chairs on the Titanic. Antarctica is hotter than LA. Chunk by chunk, Greenland slips in the sea. Preachers play whack-a-mole with the devil. Oligarchs build riot bunkers with wine cellars. Voting machines are replaced by Wheel of Fortune. All the answers on Jeopardy are lies. Plagues queue up to carry us away, bundled in death, the ironic rescue helicopter. I stick my fingers in my ears, shut my eyes. I stick a needle in my arm, pray for a saucer of milk. The next one's a little more upbeat, at least in relative to the others. It's called God the Day Drinker. God's the kind of guy you want to have a pint with. I always perch on the stool beside him. I'll have what he's having, I say to the bartender. God thinks that's pretty funny. Don't believe the word of God stuff. He's not a talker. Mention politics, and he throws a shoe at Fox News. Bring up religion, and he starts ordering shots. Used to, I'd visit the bar but wouldn't see him. These days, he's there till closing time. I heard he was downsized or on disability, and that's why no one runs things anymore. Recently, he switched from beer to martinis. He's fond of the olives. They're salty like tears. I hear he's ordering a round for everyone, but without instructions for an ark. And maybe I'll read one more. This is called Everybody Knows. The heaving of the coffee maker sounds like Darth Vader crooking his finger from the dark side. I'm halfway there because every fried egg's bottom burns in bacon grease, even sunny side up. The first day of school, drizzling gray. Heroin dealers in yellow raincoats wait at bus stops with umbrellas. The bus passes school and keeps going, takes the ramp to the interstate. Some of the children cry. Some ask the man to drive faster. The feed on my phone says, "Eyewitness commits suicide." The Attorney General nods, makes the sign of the cross. No one wants to be Mel Gibson in that movie where the conspiracy theorist is right. Facebook, Instagram, digital bricks in a wall to contain the dark side. Swiping left, swiping right, windshield wipers in driving rain, driving to the scene of the crash, the spatula sliding under the egg, preparing to flip it over.
Thank you, Mike. These are wonderful. They're so vivid and relatable. What has the reception been?
It's been good. People who have read it really like it. Many of them say it's what they've thought, that I'm saying what they're thinking. I had one person tell me that when she got to the end, she was wanting more. She just wanted more and more of it. So I've had good reception from people who've read it. I suppose they wouldn't make a point of telling me it was no good if they didn't like it, but a lot of people have told me that they do like it.
And some people do. Some people do write and say, wow, I didn't quite like it, or I didn't like this particular poem because, or I think you're wrong because that has happened to me. So I know that actually it happens. So you have the book there. Can you show us the cover and describe it
Sure.
for our radio listeners? Yeah.
I really like the picture on the cover. When Rabbit House agreed to publish my book, I needed to find a cover, and I was lucky to find this. This lady is a Russian ballerina, and this is a photo of her. It wasn't on the Titanic; it was on another ship, but it was about the same time period. I don't remember her name, but it was the same time period, and she was doing a world tour. And I just like the expression, and I hope I can find an equally good cover for my next book.
And okay, speaking of next book, do you have title for your short story collection?
I think it's going to be Sam at the Bar and Grill. One of the stories involved it's actually memoir. I was on a tennis tournament and traveled to Western Kentucky to a tennis tournament with my tennis team. And after the matches one day, we went to a local sports bar to get something to eat and to watch the UK basketball team. And so the story is about a guy who sat beside me, a local, and just started talking to me. And without revealing all the details, he ends up showing the prejudice that still exists, the racial prejudice that still exists in his comments about the basketball players. But he's a sympathetic character also. So I like that story, and that's my plan right now is to title the collection after that story.
Okay. Practicing law and writing, how the two go together or don't go together?
They don't go together. They go together in the novels because I can use my law skills and my knowledge of law to create the plot. And I like doing courtroom scenes, and I like having the characters explain the law. So it helps with that. But in terms of, say, writing poetry, I have to be in a different frame of mind. If if I've been practicing law all day and I have to change my frame of reference. What I do is I try to get up very early in the morning before that part of my day begins and try to do my writing then, so that I'm not trying to go back and forth between the sort of more linear kind of thinking you have to do practicing law and the circular or nonlinear feeling that you need to have to be open to inspiration and to creativity.
And I happen to know that you're writing new poems. Tell our listeners about those poems.
Yes, I am writing. I've been writing dream poems. Um, a There was recently a Zoom reading by Christopher McCurry, and he had some dream poems, and I was happy to hear somebody else doing it. And when he read his, I could I I could experience them, and it made me feel good about mine because they didn't really feel that much different than mine in terms of the feel and how they hold together. So I've written a whole lot of dream poems. Um, for a while there, I was deliberately cultivating the ability to have the dream and recall it, and then as soon as I wake up, transcribe it. And that's really what it is, or it can be. So I would literally pull the dream back into my mind. And if you can do that and actually hold it in your imagination a little bit, I found that I could go in and look around and, like you're visiting a place. So I was able to do that for some dreams, um, which is kind of a fun exercise. I've lately, I don't write as many dream poems. I'm just writing, not starting out in a regular, what we call a regular awake state.
No, I've noticed from experience and from observation of other people that we have certain creative periods in which we do certain things. Okay, I'm going to write a political poem a day, or I'm going to write a dream poem a day, or and when we're done with it, when we've learned whatever we learned from it, whether it's making sense to ourselves or learning a particular skill, we just move on to something else. Something that you said sounded interesting. A lot of things you said sounds interesting, but something that you said I want to bring back, and it is to recall your dream in your imagination and walk around in it. I've read about that exercise in which you can go back and you can change the dream. Have you tried that?
No, I haven't. What I try to do is um, be faithful to the dream.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my theory is that there's something that holds the dream together, and maybe it's not, maybe time doesn't work the same way in dreams that it does in our daily awake state. But I try to be faithful to the dream, even if it doesn't appear to make any sense. Um, so it's not like I don't try to think, well, this represents this and this represents that. I try to describe literally um, what happened in the dream. Um, and I don't know how well it works. I found the key to being able to get back into the dream is to, if you can, just hold on to a little bit of the image and the feeling that you have in the dream. If you can grab a hold of that and just reinforce that, then when you try to write the dream, you just try to get into that. And sometimes you can go back and imagine, or not imagine, but find the parts of the dream that you didn't actually remember. You can remember them.
And I found that the more I write my dreams down, the more I remember. The more I start, kind of like new rooms open and I can walk through. I love writing dream poems myself and I find them supremely interesting. I interviewed a wonderful poet called Marilyn Khaled. She lives and teaches in Tennessee, and she teaches dream writing in Knoxville University, I believe. And that's something that I uh, ask all my guests who teach creative writing: what is the most important thing you teach your students? If there is one thing you want them to remember from your class, what is it? And she says, write down your dreams. They're just ready poems or source for poems. And I believe that. So what is the most important thing you teach your students?
Well, my students, I teach law.
That's
So
okay.
what most important, I want them to be able to think like lawyers. I want them to be able to analyze a situation. One of the classes I teach, and I try to break things down in their simplest components. Um, that's different than what they do in law school. In law school, you have to figure out what's behind a lot of complicated words and terminology by reading cases. And I try to break it down to the basic components. Um, in legal writing, I try to teach them how to construct arguments and how to express themselves clearly. Um, what I tell them is the process of trying to write your argument will help you better understand really what your point is and how the law fits together. So the effort of trying to communicate will help clarify in your mind, because the the more clearly you can express it, the more clearly you actually understand it. So I'm trying to get them to think that way.
And I can see why you need to get up early to write your poems before you switch to that part of the brain. That you need to do everything very clear, very simple, and very clearly communicated and broken down to the simplest parts. Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's logical structure.
Mm. I admire you, Mike, very much for all you do, for all your writing, for all your learning, for all your planning and devotion to your art and to writing where your heart is. Uh, I appreciate you coming on Accents, and I look forward to seeing you around town.
Thank you so much, Katerina, and thank you for having me on the show.